Others just hold them head on ball. And them woman stronger than a wall. A big pusher iron she daughter. Son in jail for manslaughter. Too bad for him, he and them bad boys. No bail, that's the black man's choice. Like Shadow say, poverty is hell. She little girl child belly start to swell. Some say life is a cycle, but don't draw she no circle. Where will it all end? Only time to tell. Outside the siren keep howling, inside your belly will growling. Police raid very often. Simpson measuring a coffin. One night in bed you're sleeping. Next night is a wave that you're keeping. So you're praying to win the lotto, not to hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 crying. Voices from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, crying. Voices from the ghetto. We are not a forgotten people. Yo. With dented pride, they sold your phone. Revolutions, great politicians born. And often their tragic story brings a journalist glory. No wonder they view the world with scorn. From since the day they born, some call them rebels without a cause. These social victims of unjust laws, but yet they christen the heroes. Renegades, desperados, forever knocking on heaven's doors. Hear me? Steel band music shatters the silence. Harmony to conquer the violence. Big men run when cops approach, fighting for scraps with the cockroach. Young Turks, they're tough protecting. Almost every young girl expecting. So tomorrow, begs till tomorrow, there'll be another voice from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, crying, crying, voices from the ghetto, crying.
Good evening, Simrats and Grenadines. My name is Joe Thomas. The program you're about to listen to is called Voices. That's an inside joke. We have a good program lined up for you tonight. We are expecting to have the president of cricket, West Indies, and Mr. Kishore Shallow. Mr. Kishore Shallow, as you know, has been making waves here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines recently because of his decision to join with the opposition New Democratic Party, and more importantly, to declare his candidacy for the North Leeward constituency. Mr. Shallow did say that he had some commitments in his, oh, here he is. I was just going to make an apology for you, but you're on time. Yeah, he did say that he would run a little late, but as is normal, before we get into the program with Mr. Shallow, I will read my column for last week, Friday. The column is called There's More in the Mortar. And here goes. The financing of the hospital project is quite worrying. For me, the worry goes beyond the numbers, which jumped from US 98 million to US 125 million. Opposition parliamentarian Daniel Cummins was evidently onto something during the debate. However, reporting on the financing, which won bipartisan support in Parliament, did not flesh out what Cummins said, except for criticizing the government for not sending the contract to tender. To understand where I'm going, a little history is needed. As early as 2010, the Unity Labour Party touted the idea of a new hospital. The government may not have been in a rush to secure funding and build a hospital because Prime Minister Gonzalez said health and hospital service was not a priority because only 6% of the population polled listed it as essential. In 2022, things have changed. The pro-government Searchlight newspaper carried a piece featuring Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez. In that piece, Gonzalez disclosed that the World Bank agreed to lend St. Vincent $64 million of the projected $98 million for the construction of the hospital. Even more critical, Camilo's revelation that the bank on August 8, 2022, credited St. Vincent US $51 million. He said he expected the remaining $13 million by July 2023. I want you to follow these dates. Gonzalez also disclosed that the remaining $30 million was secured from the OPEC Fund for Overseas Development, OFID. The finance minister's disclosure appears to be authentic. In a press release dated August 10, 2022, the World Bank said, the World Bank approved a $51 million credit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to modernize hospital services and build a more resilient and sustainable health infrastructure and system, including the construction of a new acute care hospital and healthcare reform. The release quoted IMF official Michel Dragdolati, who said, "We are excited to support the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines with this project that blends much needed health sector infrastructure investment with system reform. This project will play a catalytic role in modernizing hospital services for generations to come while leveraging primary care and transforming the health system. This investment will provide accessible, high-quality hospital services to the population and reduce the need for costly overseas care." If our country was credited US $51 million in August 2022, why did construction begin in July 2024? Why are we borrowing US $125 million with the excuse that the cost of material has gone up? If our finance minister is to be believed, the government in 2022 had already secured all of the financing for the hospital in 2022, US $64 million from the World Bank and $30 million from OPEC. Therefore, the explanation that waiting for the World Bank's loan would have delayed the construction of the hospital by 1 year is without merit. Moreover, the explanation that the money will be repurposed for hurricane burial relief does not meet muster. Multilateral institutions like the World Bank do not work in such a whimsical manner. There is no way the government can negotiate a US $64 million loan to build a hospital and then decide to do whatever it wants with the money. Additionally, what happened to parliamentary oversight? Can a government have parliament approve a loan for a hospital and then spend the money as it pleases? Another set of questions looms large. Did the government secure up to $85 million by August 22 and sit in it, waiting to start construction closer to the 2025 election? If it did, such a partisan approach to governance would cost our country an additional US $27 million because the construction cost has ballooned to US $125 million. Could it be that the government spent the World Bank and OFID money it secured in 2022 for the hospital and was compelled to borrow US $125 million from Taiwan? Should we not interrogate and investigate what appears to be an incestuous relationship between Taiwan and the Gonzalez administration? St. Vincent and the Grenadines has a debt portfolio with Taiwan close to $1 billion. Because Taiwan desperately needs to buy friends, only 14 countries out of 194 independent countries recognize the country. Is Taiwan aiding and abetting official corruption with these loans? A bigger question is whether Taiwan is improperly interfering in our internal affairs by funding projects intended to impact the outcome of elections. Why did the government fall over itself and disregard the tendering board in awarding the construction of the hospital to Taiwan's overseas engineering and construction company? Based on the August 2022, I'm sorry, I'll read it again. Based on the August 2024 debate in Parliament, there's a question as to the actual cost of the hospital. Did Father Ralph and son Camilo contradict themselves in their presentation on the hospital? Searchlight newspaper, the official voice of the government, carried a piece captioned, "Parliament approves US $100 million loan for hospital." The paper said, Father Ralph countered opposition claim that the contract is worth $120 million. However, in the same article, Searchlight quotes Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez as saying the government sought a loan of US $125 million to build a hospital and the healthcare resilience project. Which is it? Do we have a loan, or is it still seeking one? What is the healthcare resilience project? How much would it cost? Nearly 1/3, $1 billion of our national debt is owed to Taiwan. The ULP, I'll read that last sentence again. With nearly $1 billion of our national debt owed to Taiwan, the ULP's government intend to place a bigger hook in the nation's gill. Vincentians must ask whether this relationship benefits St. Vincent and the Grenadines or the corrupt governing elite. That was my take for last week. Kishore Shalom, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Council Jomo Sanga Thomas. Pleasure to be here with you.
It's good to be with you as well. Now, I see that you stepped into I don't know if it's an ant's nest or a beehive, but you put your mouth in the people's business and say that St. Vincent was 30 years behind St. Lucia. Why did you make such a characterization? Can you verify? Can you support the assertion?
Well, Jomo, let me start. And of course, I want to greet your listeners. And I appreciate the invitation to spend some time with you. I listened to your program last week, I think, when Conroy, my colleague, Conroy Huggins.
No, that was the week before.
A week before, and it was pretty enlightening. The time is flying so fast these days, can't even keep up. A lot is happening. But, I always appreciated the fact that as Vincentians, we, and by and large throughout the Caribbean, we are encouraged to practice freedom of speech, freedom of opinion. And when I say that, being in a position where one could decide, what entities or organizations you want to join, regardless of whether it is business, politics, once it is legal, of course. And in the same breath that we should be encouraged to express our opinions freely, right? Whether it makes sense or not, that's a total different argument. But generally, my practice has always been to speak from an informed position, right? You would hardly ever hear me speak unless it is me expressing humor. You would hardly hear me speaking out of turn, and also with me speaking without facts. Now, when you compare us, and I was asked a direct question from Jagarangs on another station, how far back do I believe St. Vincent and the Grenadines is from our neighboring islands. And I used St. Lucia as an example and said that when you compare the, and I didn't go into details on the program because I don't think that was the question asked. I wasn't asked to elaborate either. But my decision in terms of the 30 years, my answer in terms of 30 years is in comparison between our tourism sector in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to St. Lucia's tourism sector. And I will use this opportunity to give examples, Jomo. We, in recent times, very recently, we have been boasting about Sanders Resort, right? Magnificent achievement for our country, in my opinion, right? Because Sanders is a unique and incredible Caribbean brand, all right? St. Lucia has 3 Sanders Resorts, 3, right? And they have been established for many years. Now, if you look at the tourism product for St. Lucia, it is what I consider to be at a mature stage, right? Yes, there obviously access to the country, right, by international airport. In fact, they have 2 airports, right? They have sufficient accommodation, countless hotels across the island of St. Lucia. In fact, for many years, St. Lucia has been promoting their country as a destination for weddings, and they have done it with great success. This is many years they've been doing this. In addition to the airport access, the accommodation, infrastructure is well advanced compared to our blessed islands in Vincent and Grenadines also. And you want to talk also about the actual product, services that St. Lucia offers. You know, almost man-made in many instances. And I make that point, Jomo, because I often say, and I'll come to it later on, but in terms of natural beauty, I have no doubt that we have more than St. Lucia, right? But the way they have packaged, right, the resources that they have, transform it and develop it into a product that attracts tourists from all over the globe. It is absolutely incredible. And so you have a mature product, a very attractive product. You know, whether it is, you know, it is zip lining, you know, beach activities, jet skis, and all these different things you have available for tourists in St. Lucia. And it's absolutely no coincidence that they keep flooding that island every year, right? Now, compared to ours, and I'm talking tourism now still, when you look across the country, and I've heard this from tourists, persons who come for cricket and other sports, business people, right? And many others who haven't reached St. Vincent yet, but have researched the island. And from my own personal observation in St. Vincent, when you go across the island, I mean, you look at opportunities for development. I make the point about Chateaubriand Beach. One of the, when I tell you about a gem, Jomo, are you familiar with this? Because I know you visit the leeward side for years, you know. But you're talking about a beach, right? The longest beach, I believe, in the country. With you can hardly find a little stone, not even a stone, just lovely black sand beach, right? That tourists die for if they know it exists. But yet we have failed to package such. And we could speak of many other situations, many other opportunities.
Let me
Many,
ask you this though. I mean, do you think there's when you look at the tourism product, do you think there's a fair comparison? I mean, St. Lucia has had Yenoro International Airport for decades, whereas our international airport, which is central to the tourism product, is only on for what, 7 years now? Is that I mean, it doesn't take away from your comparison, but do you think it's a fair comparison? It's like,
well, I mean, Jomo, I was making the point because all this contributes, of course, to the fact that we are years behind, right?
yeah.
So what the question you're asking is strengthening the argument that we are way behind. The fact that St. Lucia International Airport has been in existence for such a long time, and that tourists have been flooding St. Lucia for well over 2 decades instead of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, then that is indeed the point. Now, this is just tourism. This is just one component. If you look at even sports, which I'm very passionate about, all right? I mean, and ironically, right? You have we just celebrated our own Shafika Maloney in St. Vincent. What great achievement and success she had at the Olympics. And I think every Vincentian should celebrate her. I mean, it's an incredible achievement for this special young lady. But you look across to St. Lucia and they are celebrating gold. But I am not going to emphasize on the gold versus our fourth place in the Olympics. What I'm going to emphasize on is the reward, Jomo. The reward that was given to Miss Alfred, right, in St. Lucia. 1 million EC dollars, right? Land. And I mean, we will go on and on about what she was given in St. Lucia compared to what our star athlete received.
But that might be because she didn't medal. She came fourth.
Well, again, because the pride that that young lady brought to us, Jomo, every single Vincentian, right? I personally felt as though she won gold, right? And I'm sure that feeling,
She didn't. She didn't.
the feeling of pride, Jomo, right? And for us to be represented in the way she did, I mean, what she got, a welcome at the airport, right? And then you ask the question, I mean, was this really for the young lady or was this for the government? Right? Who benefited most from this? Right? And I mean, Mr. Alfred received even a public holiday. Right? And so many more well-deserved.
But so what about private?
One second. That is one. And the point is, this is the point. So in addition to the rewards given to this young lady in St. Lucia compared to what Miss Maloney received, I believe that she should have gotten much more, but that is not the point. The point is that this did not happen by accident. This happened because of design by at least two governments in St. Lucia. But I'm going to obviously credit the current dispensation there in office because this has manifested under their watch, and the reward certainly was provided on merit by Prime Minister the Honorable Philip Pear and his government. So much credit to them for doing that. But there's a sports academy set up in St. Lucia, Jomo. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. I had the opportunity to tour this facility a few years ago. This facility has, I mean, athletes from all over the country sleeping at the academy, pursuing their education, right? And every afternoon after school, sometimes in between, because part of their program, they engage whether playing football or track or cricket. I've been to this facility multiple times, right? There's a very vibrant and robust program being executed by this government in St. Lucia, right? I have worked and in collaboration and supported the sports minister, the Honorable Kenso Casimir. I mean, a very passionate young man about sports development. He himself was an athlete, right? And so because Miss Alfred didn't achieve what she did at the Olympics because yes, she's talented, but it wasn't only because of talent. It was because of support from the government. And had Miss Maloney received similar support from this government, maybe we might have been able to celebrate gold.
The point is taken. I want to ask you, I want to give you a ULP retort. ULP says, yeah, which I thought was an interesting concession to the point that you made about 30 years. Prime Minister Gonzalez says, yeah, we are 30 years behind, but we were 50 years behind. And now we're 30 years behind.
And I'll tell you what, right? And no one would say that we haven't progressed in any way over the last 2 decades plus under this administration. Because naturally, if you're in government for 20 something years, Jomo, you must do something. You're supposed to do something, right? That is what you're employed by the people to do. And I re-emphasize, the government is employed by the government because it is the people who employ the government. And I want the people to understand that, right? The government is employed to advance the country, to develop the country. And if you're in office for 20 plus years, you are supposed to. The argument is, John, the question I'm asking, have we developed enough? Has St. Vincent and the Grenadines advanced enough? Have we progressed enough as a nation under this administration for the last 2 decades plus? And no one, right, with any sober mind and objectivity would say, yes, we have. Because the truth is, we have moved at snail's pace. And that is the point, Joe.
I am not arguing with your point. I just want you to develop the point, which you have done. So, so that was that. But now, having gotten that out of the way, tell us why politics and why now for Keisha Shalom?
I believe that I have an obligation to my country, right? I've been, my first real exposure was as a 12-year-old playing cricket for grammar school. I traveled to Barbados and I saw, I got the opportunity to see different, understand different culture, interact, see a developed Barbados compared to us even then. Fast forward a couple of years after, I played for St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the 15 team. And from since then, I've taken great pride in representing my country. And over the years, I've been quite fortunate to travel a lot, right? Across the globe. I've been to every continent, Jomo. And one of the things when I travel that I prioritize is I look for opportunities of how, what we can adapt in St. Vincent to make us better. And, when you travel, when you explore the world, you identify things, you identify opportunities, and you wonder, why haven't we adapted, these opportunities, what I consider to be an improved lifestyle that we could be enjoying as a people. And I believe I've been quite fortunate, blessed, to have received this sort of exposure. And I would say that I enjoy what I do professionally as a consultant and as a cricket administrator. But having served at different levels regionally, I believe that, now is the appropriate time when I am You know, I believe in a position my family is comfortable. You know, I won't have to compromise much, and I'm independent because let's not take it for granted, Jomo. Despite my, I mean, request before to enter politics, politics in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is not easy. You know, you're especially in opposition. You know, it's one thing if you join the government, but when you decide to join the opposition, knowing the risk, knowing the risk, Jomo, that you're not only putting yourself at, but your family, then it makes it a very difficult decision. And so I wanted to be at a place in my life where I could say that my family and I are independent enough that despite the attempts, right, even if they are perceived attempts, in the event that there are any, I could stand solid against them. And so I am fortunate to be in that position now where I can do that. And again, because of my obligation to serve my country, I recall yesterday I was driving home after the convention, and I had a very emotional time, Jomo, because I was just reflecting and conversations with my mother, conversation with my father about being able to contribute back to your country, right? That when your parents invest in you, sometimes there are different motives and objectives. They just really want you to be happy and so on. But I had discussions with how I could contribute back to my country with them. And for me now to have taken that bold step and started that journey officially, I would say yesterday in that convention, on that platform, and with my parents not around to actually see that I have taken that bold move, that for me was a bit emotional. And I believe that whatever I do is an extension of them and a representation of them. And this is certainly something they would have been proud for me to do in terms of making a positive contribution to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and to an extent the region. And it was all these considerations that led me to making this decision of representing North Leeward people and the NDP party going into this next elections.
Very well. But why NDP? I mean, if you listen to the Prime Minister and his team, he says you left a constellation of bright stars and you went into a dark orbit, a dark backward orbit. Could you respond to that?
Well, I certainly resonate with the policy of the NDP at this moment. But if you follow my leadership, my administration in cricket, Jomo, one would not be surprised of my decision to join NDP at this point. I am one who have advocated strongly, even against opposition in cricket for term limits. Right? In SVG Cricket Association, while I was president, I brought up the idea of term limit because from 1947, when the National Cricket Association was formed, up until when I became president in 2014, I was the sixth president, Jomo. Sixth president from 1947 to 2014 and 14, sixth president. And when you look around, and I appreciated the contribution of all those great people over the years, but in terms of the progress, I wasn't seeing it. And, people were comfortable being figureheads in the organization, right, without much being done. And when you're in a position for so long, you know that, you start feeling entitled, you feel happy in a sense of ownership. And I made a conscious effort that is not going to happen to me or any other president of the association after I left. And so I fought, with the affiliates to convince them that an introduction of term limits is the best for the organization. Unfortunately, that found favor with majority, and so we implemented term limit day for 6 years. At Windward Islands, when I became the president of Windward Islands Cricket, I did the very same. introduced term limit for, I think it's 8 years there. And since becoming the president of Cricket West Indies, and even prior while I was vice president, I started the process along with President Ricky Skerritt then to introduce term limit to Cricket West Indies. So Jomo, now think of it. Introducing term limit in these organizations, these national and regional organizations, internationally recognized organizations, and to be living in a country and accept that we have had a single leader for almost 25 years is certainly not something I could support, right? And that in itself is, for me, fundamentally wrong. It is unhealthy for our country, right? And it's not something I could stand by idly by the side and watch go on. And I believe that my involvement and participation and support of the NDP would change that. And that, for me, I'm sure, would bring some positive results to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is what I mentioned there, is obviously in addition to the several policies of NDP, and of course the failings that we all know of the ULP. And I say that we all know because even the ULP supporters know of these failings and accept them. But they're partisan. There are some people partisan in the country, and that has been peddled and manipulated in a very calculated design way
What are some of these failings that you want to point to?
Well, I think appropriately, let me start with North Leeward. I grew up in North Leeward, right? You spent quite a lot of time in Coastal. I only learned that recently, Joe. I didn't realize that you used to
You're late, man. You're late.
Be such a regular in Coastal.
I can tell you some other things, but I won't.
But I grew up in Coastal, went to school in Westwood Methodist School, and just before going to grammar school. So I got to grammar school when I was about 11 years. And even thereafter, every weekend I took the opportunity to spend it with my grandmother in Coastal up until I finished grammar school, because, that was my preference. I enjoy the rural lifestyle, the love and, knowing everybody living next to you and in the community and so on. And I enjoyed that up until I became an adult before I went off to study. But in the early days of growing up in Coastal and North Leeward, I experienced a thriving economy. I experienced independence in that people were working hard, whether it is in farming, whether it was in construction, the economy was thriving. It was vibrant. And so much so that you know my uncle Fitzy very well. And Fitzy in those days had a clothing store in town. He was selling all those expensive garments. I don't know if you could have afforded it at the time, Jomo, but they used to be quite expensive, right?
I didn't buy anything from him.
Yeah, some real brand names, right? Fitzy is a fellow of great class, and he continues that way up to this way. But Fitzy had a store, and Fitzy would tell me, boy, there's nothing he used to enjoy more than a Friday and a Saturday when these fellas from North Leeward come to town. Because the men them didn't even ask for price. They didn't even use to check the prices, Jomo. They just say, give me this one. I want this one for my girlfriend. I want this one for me. And they're gone. And that was really what happened with businesses around Kingston, right? So not only in North Leeward, people were benefiting, because I tell you, when you buy the shop something, they're buying cases of drinks, right? They didn't buy one car for 3 for 10. They buy by the case. They might buy a car for 3 cases, actually. And then they come to town and they shopping and everyone happy, and the crime rate was next to nothing, right? No serious crime really existed in those times, or very little to I can't recall a murder incident growing up in North Leeward. You drive through North Leeward currently, and you wonder in some cases, and I say this with no disrespect anyway, but some village you drive through after 6:30 in the evening, and it's almost like a ghost town. Right? People have had to migrate and leave, whether to move to other places in St. Benson, move to Kingston, and move out the country totally, right? Because they want to improve their lifestyle. They just can't afford to do it in North Leeward anymore. And let me just put this into context for you, Jomo. If you are working for, just say you have a job in Kingston, regular job, $1,500 a month, thereabout. Let's say even $2,000 a month, right? And you're traveling from almost any part of North Leeward. You're spending to traverse to go back and forth. You're spending at least $20 a day, Jomo, right? $20 a day, right? $20 a day. Just imagine if you have to do that for a month, right? I mean, do the math. You're spending at least $400 in transportation alone just to get to your job. You start to buy lunch yet, right? And you have to clothe yourself and all these other things. So at the end of the month, you end up with next to nothing. Very low disposable income. I mean, the effort alone is not encouraging to take up a job in Kingston, right? However, in the 90s, that was not really necessary. At least if you walk in town,
But you would agree in the 1990s we had a different dispensation. We had bananas was still in up until the late 90s. We had bananas.
Let me say that there was and this is no secret, there was also a vibrant underground economy.
Indeed, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which contributed significantly to that. But in addition to that, people were building houses because it wasn't just about, the marijuana planters or the marijuana farmers just selling weed, but there were construction taking place, and there were so many other things like I spoke about earlier. There were shops and so on. So that is why the economy was thriving. But once all that was crippled in a very design way, and ironically, fast forward 20 plus years with us championing medicinal marijuana. I mean, how ironic is that, right, Jomo? Cripple the economy, cripple the people of North Leeward, right? Took away, as I consider, snatched away their independence, only to come back years after and say that let us involve you, let us give you a license to participate in medicinal marijuana. Look at agriculture. As I said, there was a lot of farming taking place, marijuana and others. And you go across the whole of North Leeward now, whether it is Rosal, whether it's in the Richmond area and all over, you saw farming and you still see land, very fertile land that's available for farming. What has been done to our agriculture sector in North Leeward? We have a project that came there years ago. Up to this point, the project, I mean, great investment, a lot of money been spent there, right? Significant amount of money been spent there, but yet no major return, at least not to this economy anyway. There are a few people employed, yes, but let us focus on those people who lost their lands, those people who used to feed their family, and the revenues generated from selling the produce that they work hard, blood, sweat, and tears on those land. Those people were displaced, Jomo. They were removed, promised to be compensated. And up to this point, I guarantee you, they all have been either not compensated or undercompensated significantly. They were also promised to be relocated, to be given lands, Jomo. Up to this point, they have not been given these land. And these are years have passed. Just imagine you take away people land, People whose only income and all they knew and appreciated was farming, right? You took away their lands. You don't give them any lands where they could go and farm that they could produce some money. You pay them some pennies, right? I mean, can you pay a man a couple $1,000 who been planting and producing fruits and vegetables and selling them weekly to supermarkets and so on? I mean, they have missed out on thousands of dollars during this period that they're waiting on the government, waiting on this government to give them lands that they could farm. That is the harsh reality there. Now, the government is championing agriculture, and this is the irony and the thing, you know, that we have a government who clearly is saying publicly that they believe in agriculture. They believe that the agriculture sector is one that could drive our revenue. But yet, in what is the biggest constituency in the country, North Leeward, right, with the most farming land, and I say biggest in terms of land mass, of course, right, you are stifling agriculture there. Jomo, yesterday I made the point about a young man. I went to Richmond on Saturday, and I was just going around to observe the lands there and the project, the quarry project, and all that is taking place there. And I was driving over and I saw a young man, a young attractive man, 30 years old, right, chasing about almost 100 sheep, right, chasing them and getting them to go on the farm. And I pull over and just to say hello, you know, because, you know, I found that to be inspiring, Jomo. Looking at that in the hot sun, burning sun, a young man, you know, farming, that for me was really inspiring, right? And something that we should encourage. And I decided just to greet him and so on and say hello. And as I say hello, the fellow like make a double look and say, Dr. Shallow? And I say, yes, it's me. You know, and the fellow said, man, listen, 2 days ago, I reach out to you on Facebook. Now, I don't check Facebook very often. I check Facebook once per week or sometimes once every other week, right?
You have to change that now. You're a politician, though. Because everybody don't have your number.
I will be one of the good politicians where they could contact my phone, man. That's okay. You know, but yeah, I try to keep up, but I can't, not on social media anyway. But this young man said he reached out to me about 2 days prior, saying that he reached out asking to have a conversation with me because he have been trying to be heard for some time now, but no one been listening to him. And he shared this story in that brief period that we spoke because he didn't want the sheep and so on to run away, of course. And he told me that he inherited this land. You know, that his family, his mother and his father farmed for many years. And he even had a job. He was a public servant at one point. In fact, I'm sure he won't mind if I give some information. He was a police officer, Jomo. And he decided that after being in this force for about a year, he decided that, you know, he better off doing what he loves by being on the farm, producing, and, you know, taking care of his animals. The young man said that with what has taken place over the last year and a half, or even 2, what he grew up absolutely loving and enjoyed doing is becoming something that he hates. He said because of how he has been treated as a young farmer, he now gets into a point where he hates farming, right? And he said that he doesn't know if he could find it within himself to encourage anyone to get into farming under this government, right? He said he is being threatened of eviction from the land, right? he has been pushed and cheated in all kind of way. And Jomo, you would think that a young man like this, the government, in a time when you're encouraging young people to get into agriculture, you will be using him as a model, right? And there are so many other cases. You talk about Lennox Lampkin and those fellas, the old Lampkin family up in Rosal, Porsey and them, right? You're talking about the Chimbers family. You're talking about Glenroy King and Giddy and all them other guys who've been farming. Have a old teacher Larry, who left teaching back in the day to go into farming, right? That can't happen now because these people feel totally neglected. They have not been receiving any support. And this is just Leeward. This is a view I understand is shared right across the entire country, including in the Windward side.
And how based on what you are saying, that neglect that you're pointing to in agriculture and in other sectors of the economy, how would you say, have you had a chance yet to speak with your numbers in the New Democratic Party about ways in which they intend to turn that around? Because I can tell you this, when the ULP came into power in 2001, they did a poverty assessment which said that 37% of the people lived in poverty. And in 2019, the ULP stifled a study which said that high 30% of the people lived in poverty. So it seems as though they met a lot of poverty then, and 20 years, 25 years on, they haven't dented it. In fact, it appears as though it has increased. So what is it your group, what is it your party is saying we can help to turn that around? Because if you have 3 in 7 or 4 in 3 in 10 or 4 in 10 of the population living in poverty, that's a big hole to dig out of.
It is. And the New Democratic Party, for years now, not only since I have joined the team as a candidate, but they have tried their utmost to sensitize the Vincentian public about their policies that they will implement once elected, once given an opportunity. Recently, I had a conversation with Dr. Friday, our esteemed leader, and he also again reiterated to me, and at the convention that we had, not on Sunday, but the week before, and yesterday as well, he re-emphasized and echoed our pillars that we are very confident that we are going to build and strengthen this economy, strengthen St. Vincent on. And agriculture is one of those pillars that we believe that our country, and we believe with great conviction as well, that could boost our economy.
But how? What do they talk about in a practical sense?
Well,
because everybody can see. Look, the ULP says that it's doing agriculture. It spent $27 million in the last budget of 2024. There was $27 million, and we saw in September they're giving away $27 million to farmers and fisher folk. But you know that is not that gift is not going to transform agriculture in any way.
Well, Jomo, it's one thing to say it, right? I don't know if it has been practiced, right? It's one thing to document it, but I don't know if it's in practice, it is actually happening, right? I could give you examples. Let me give you one. I remember, and let's talk about fishing, because one of the pillars for the NDP is also blue economy, right?
But I don't want you to go to the blue economy yet. I want you to stay with agriculture since you spend so much time on it.
And there's a correlation there somewhat, because it's the same sort of neglect and deficiencies that exist, right? Why we haven't been able to make any serious significant strides in any of them, right? In that there are opportunities there that people, again, Vincentians have attempted to be independent. And I know of an individual who attempted to get a trawler for fishing, right? And he has been neglected, given all kind of run wrong. And this man was willing to invest at least 80% into this for himself. He had other investors line up, but just didn't receive the support of this government, right? And that is what I've heard from the farmers as well in North Leeward and across the country. Now, it is not rocket science, Jomo. What we have to ask ourselves, and I think a major issue, a major factor that contributes to this challenge, this deficiency that we have, the failings that we have been experiencing in the blue economy and agriculture is self-interest, right? There's no real genuine efforts, consistent efforts to make any progress to boost agriculture or the blue economy unless it is about self, right? Now, with anything, if you have enough people, once people see there are opportunities there, they are going to invest the time and efforts in a sector. And again, I do not subscribe and I cannot subscribe to a point made some time ago by one of I think it could have been from the Prime Minister, saying that young people don't want to get into agriculture. Because I just spoke about a young man who is 30 years old, who is extremely passionate and has been for many years wanted. I know of other people who want to venture out into agriculture, right? But they're not receiving support. They're not inspired, Jum. Now,
Well, the argument that young people don't want to get into agriculture is not borne out. I mean, particularly North Leeward and North Windward, even down to North Central Windward. I mean, a lot of young people engage in the underground economy in growing and planting and selling marijuana and then going over the seas to sell it. So that argument is clearly not borne out by. The other thing I remember, when I was dabbling in representative politics, I talked about the whole idea of marrying idle hands with idle lands. That there are a lot of lands, you have a lot of young people. If you make it attractive, young people would run with it. But again, that idea it was never picked up, and we are where we are now. So that's why I was trying to ask you, what specific program the opposition has, whether it's in the blue economy, because we have a huge seascape, or in agriculture itself.
yes.
What is it the opposition, the New Democratic Party, unassuming power, what would it do differently than this party?
Well, as I've said some time ago, I was in a meeting speaking to some counterparts, and a lot of time, if people do not have confidence in a system, Jum, then they're very unlikely to invest in any way, right? Be it money or time, right? Resources generally they will not invest, and because of a government that has failed people generally, because people have observed self-interest, right, as a driving factor, right? They do not have confidence to invest in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, whether Vincentians or others. I believe a change of government instantly will inspire such confidence in investing in our country, right? I believe that a new dispensation in the New Democratic Party, right, under the leadership of Dr. Friday, will inspire people that when he says that the agriculture sector is going to improve and that we need young people and we are going to support young people, that they're going to believe us and that they're going to come and invest in so on. And of course, because of the confidence in this new government, you will also have us being able to establish new markets for our farmers in St. Vincent and Grenadines. And that fundamentally is what is lacking at this point, where people do not believe that you're given enough support to get market outside, or even where markets exist. The framework, right, is not there to facilitate them to export their produce, to export goods outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And so people are saying, then what is the point, right? And listen, some of the issues that exist now, and I'll tell you, I mean, I'm sure you saw because I made the rounds on social media some time ago, where, and this is to debunk the argument that there's not even a local market, right? Some time ago, we look in the supermarket and we saw oranges, 4 oranges going for $23, $24. Right now, the fact that people are bringing them in to the country, it means that there's a market in St. Vincent and Grenadines. But we cannot produce oranges, lime, citrus fruits in a whole in St. Vincent and Grenadines. I mean, that is ridiculous, right? That is a reflection of poor governance of this country right? And if we can't produce for our local market, right, then we can't argue. And this is not because people don't want to, but again, they have not been given the support or the competencies to produce consistently, right? You have people here who could do it, Jomo. I mean, Lennox is one of the a brilliant mind who he has researched farming, has a model farm up in Rosal, right? How many times have Lennox Lampkin attempted to help the Ministry of Agriculture? How seriously have they taken, and anybody else for that matter, who offers ideas? How do they facilitate them? Do we have a government system? Do we have a government that facilitate or that people feel is conducive for them to offer opinions, right? In fact, some may argue that if you offer any opinion or you sound too independent in this country, you're victimized or marginalized, or you might just find yourself, in the corner of the room, Jomo. I don't know if you could attest to that, right? But
You think?
that is the reality in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is agriculture, that is blue economy, but even tourism, right? Let me just jump back to tourism, because this is certainly a pillar, and I'm speaking now of the pillars of the New Democratic Party, right? Tourism, and we talk of St. Lucia. I like to use St. Lucia because St. Lucia is a stone throw away from us, and that is why I like to use them as an example, right? We don't even need to go as far as Barbados, right? Let's use St. Lucia. If you go down to Chateaubriand, Pétius, you could pedal the stone over to St. Lucia. I'm sure you're aware, because you probably have attended it in the past, Jomo. The Jazz and Arts Festival, right? They bring some of the global stars to St. Lucia annually, right? Several of them every year. And tourists flock to St. Lucia for that. Do we have anything like that in St. Vincent and Grenadines?
We tried to do it some time ago, but it didn't go very far.
I mean, the fact remains is that we don't do it. We do not do it now. What event do we put on in St. Vincent and Grenadines? I mean, look at Carnival. Look at Carnival. Thank God for the private promoters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And even them, we give a hard time. Right? One of the most successful events in this country over the years has been H2O Wet Fete. Right? For Luke Boy and maybe and others. Right? That is, I mean, I am hopeful that it would resurrect at some point. But I remember that show used to bring in a lot of tourists to our country. People used to be happy, look out. In fact, returning nationals used to come home only for Carnival because of Wet Fete. Biggest event in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the beginning of the Carnival season. That has been stifled and even shut down totally. We have nothing close to that to attract tourists coming into our country. What do we have, Jomo?
Yeah. Let's segue a little and go to you personally. Yesterday you appeared. That was your first public address. Is that so?
On a political platform,
political platform.
Convention, yes.
And I thought you were, and this is not a criticism of your presentation, but I thought you were more agitational and inspirational than making an address that was intended to how can I say, to demonstrate in a real way your training and your management skills, your consulting skills, and so on. Was that a decision that you made by choice, that you didn't think that meeting was the time for you to get into what some might call heavier managerial, looking holistic at the country? Do you think that you made that decision yesterday to go in the way in which you went?
Well, Jomo, don't be afraid one bit to offer constructive criticism. I'm one who is quite
No. I
quite
had
open
no,
to that.
I had no problem with the address.
Okay,
I
okay.
just,
Because I know in St. Vincent and Grenadines, people are frightened to offer any sort of criticism because but I am someone who welcome that. And listen, you have to understand your audience. First and foremost, they will tell you that any great speaker, anyone who aspiring to speak to people, you should understand your audience. And it was a case of me understanding my audience in North Leeward yesterday, and I anticipated the audience to be such, and I delivered it in that way. And by all feedback, at least by an overwhelming majority anyway, it was well received. Right. I also aware that I will have many other opportunities like this platform, and I'm grateful to you for that, where I could spend a bit more time and articulate the points, the policies, the pillars of the New Democratic Party.
in the Unity Labour Party, well, let me circle in a different way. Why do you think, and I don't think that anyone would deny this, why do you think your decision to enter into opposition politics, into national politics on the side of the opposition, has caused such a tizzy, has caused the ruling party to go in such a tizzy? Why you think that is the case?
I to maintain my, I like to come across as quite humble, right? I much prefer that. So I'll try to craft this response in such way. But the truth is that the ULP over the years have attacked NDP and suggested over the years that they have not been able to attract young candidates, right? Young professionals, young accomplished professionals. I must say that is not the case, because if you look at when the Patel and Nature and the Terence Olivier entered the New Democratic Party, they were all young professionals, right? And that is since the ULP has been in government, right? And there are others who have been part of this party over the years, whether as representative in politics, elected politics, or as candidates, or even as senators, right? We have had very capable and competent young professionals. I think it's fair that I mention two females, since I mentioned those gentlemen. So I'll mention Vinette Frederick and Zita Barnwell and others who have served this party. Now, people who have supported both ULP and NDP over the years, NDP consistently, their supporters have been championing change, have been calling for change. And Jomo, quite frankly, currently, a lot of ULP supporters have been calling for change. And they believe that there have been, and this is mainly because the ULP has been fairly good at peddling a narrative that the average age of the NDP candidates is probably a bit on the older side, right? They've been peddling that narrative. And
Is it not true? Is it not true?
Some people have bought that. Some people have accepted that, right? It'll be interesting now to see. I haven't done it, but it'll be interesting now to do a calculation of the average age of the candidates, right? They have a head start because they have a leader who is almost 80. So they have that would certainly help to balance and so on. And with the entry of Conroy, Huggins, and myself, I think it is well balanced there now. It is about the same. But I would say to you as well that if you look at the experience of the two sides as well, I mean, we are our party, the New Democratic Party, has very competent and experienced candidates and supporting staff, supporting, if you look around the car party, across the party, and the real truth is, Jomo, is that these are people who have not been given the opportunity under this dispensation for the last 20 years as well, right? But have found ways, right? Independent ways, right? Whether as starting businesses and so on, and have developed themselves in a very credible way. But Jomo, I think because of the current state of our country, St. Vincent and Grenadines, and with the NDP supporters over the years championing change, and I would say probably going into at least a good half of the ULP administration supporters believing that it's time for change, then the entry of two young candidates, Conroy and myself, has created a great deal of excitement, right? Because people are tired of the old politics, Jomo. People are tired of, some figurehead who is there just thinking that the country could only progress because of his leadership, right? What happens, God forbid, if something happens to him tomorrow? What happened to us, Jomo? Right? But that is the narrative that has been peddled for the last, I would say, 15 years at least, right? And the fact remains that when this political leader, despite on one side of the mouth speaking about youth involvement and championing youth, right? And the next side of the mouth, he's saying, I am the youngest man at 80 years old in this party.
He didn't say the youngest man. He said he was the youngest head.
I mean, some may interpret that as the youngest man in the party. May not be physically.
And the man is talking about brain, which I thought was a commentary on all the other people who sat there and allowed him to say that without saying anything.
But here you are, 30-something years old. You have young ministers who are in the 30s, vibrant, intelligent, competent professionals in the administration, but yet you're stifling them, right? You cannot even show a succession planning in your party. Who is the deputy of the party, Jomo? I mean, it's insulting to the others, to be honest, right? Not discrediting the senior statesman in any means, Mr. Daniel, right? But if you're looking at a succession planning in your party, if your interest is really in the country, you're not going to put the most senior person under you who has no intention of returning to office, right? As your deputy, you just won't do it.
It is done because the person whom he really would like to put as deputy can't properly be made deputy. Well, and because if you take that party's lineup and the projection that Soboto and Camilo are the two persons who would more than likely take over. Soboto has been in since 2008 as a senator. So he's almost there for 20 years. Camilo only came in 2013 as a senator. So Soboto has a 5-year lead. And if you're talking about him being, you would think that kind of succession that you're talking about should have taken place. But
Jomo,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem at all. One of the things of a good leader, right? One attribute of a good leader is you being able to develop leaders, right? You have to be able to develop leaders, right? And by developing leaders, it's not just to say you're developing leaders, to point fingers and say, look, I have leaders, right? But you have to justify that with actions. Now, no sober-minded person would look at the ULP administration and say that under the current leader, there have been leaders developed with a sight, a foreseeable view of transition, right?
No. But you couldn't be serious. The prime minister took his son. He made him Crown Counsel in the Attorney General's chambers. Then he made him ambassador to the United Nations. Then he made him foreign minister. Then he made him finance minister. You can't be serious if you say that no leadership was trained and developed. You have to admit that the prime minister clearly had in his mind who he wanted to be the leader. It's just that the party and the country has frustrated that.
And some may believe that, but
Oh, you don't believe that?
well, listen, naturally he must move on, because obviously we are human and we have to move on at some point. My point is not that he has identified the person to succeed him, right? My point is that he hasn't set that time in his mind. And in his consciousness, he may be thinking he should be there for another 15, 20 years. Once he be able to jog himself off the bed and go to the office.
How do you respond to this question? Our good friend Junior John is saying, is that one of the reasons why you chose NDP? You saw your elevation more easier in the NDP. Also, the deputy on your side is not young.
Under Dr. Friday, right, under his leadership, I see a party with very robust, comprehensive policies that could take this country forward. I see a party that, and a leader in Dr. Friday who is not driven by self-interest, right? And for those reasons and others are why I joined the New Democratic Party, with the ultimate goal and aim and objective to change the government of this country. Because my decision, my commitment, and the sacrifices being made by myself and others, right? But I'm speaking for myself in this case, right? Is purely in the interest of advancing St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I believe that with the New Democratic Party is where I will be better placed, right, to do such.
Right. I know you talked about agriculture, infrastructure. You talked about tourism. But you just said that you place you know that under the leadership of Dr. Friday, there's a robust, comprehensive policy to take the country forward. Would you like to point us to some of those other comprehensive policies that you think, not necessarily in the ones which you have identified so far, that you think would take us in that direction?
Well, I mentioned the pillars, those 4 pillars, because you have to have pillars, as you know, you have to stand on some solid ground foundation and so on. And the agriculture, blue economy, I spoke earlier, I touched on tourism, right, in my comparison between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Lucia. And of course, the new sector, which is you talk about the creatives and so on, right? Those are also technology and those are opportunities being missed by us. And you have heard our esteemed leader, Dr. Friday, also speak about the project, the program, the Citizens by Investment Program. I had the opportunity to sit with Dr. Friday in a very important meeting last week with some international counterparts, and we discuss the way, the framework in which a Citizens by Investment Program could actually work. Listen, Jomo, I have experienced this. I've been to St. Kitts countless times, and the development of St. Kitts, another country that is ahead of us if we were to draw a comparison again in terms of their tourist product and all of that, the economy and so on, right? Well ahead of us. And it is on the basis, on the premise, on the foundation and the robust program of the Citizens by Investment Project, right? We can't get away from that, right? So this program has worked for our neighboring countries. All right, it has worked for them. I mean, the truth is, in St. Vincent, and I take the point and appreciate that we don't have gold, we don't have oil, right? We used to have green gold, but we don't have actual coal, right? And so you have to find creative ways. Another way is tried and tested ways of generating revenue, sustain revenue that will improve the country's infrastructure and systems and so on, right? With this, with a vibrant and successful working citizen investment program, we could have better healthcare system. We could improve our schools. We could improve our sporting facilities, right? We could pay our remunerate our workers even more, right? Because the economy will be more thriving. And so you can't just shut off the opportunity to generate revenue through a program that has worked for our neighboring islands.
How do you respond? How do you respond to the government argument, well, view that if you do citizenship by investment, you end up inviting into your country rogue personalities?
Well, we could start that argument by suggesting that we didn't have citizen by investment program when the fella Ames from Bookman came here, right? From Bookman Bay Resort. And I'm sure others have creeped into our country, right? In fact, I recall researching a gentleman some time ago. I won't state the name, but I was just researching, I had reason to research this individual. The individual was from a different country, but I came across the name, was aware of his presence in St. Vincent and Grenadines, and took it upon myself to research the individual, only to find out that this individual has a Vincentian passport. How, I do not know, right? So we could talk about not doing this, right? But that is not the case. But to answer your question, Jomo, again, this is a tried and tested program. St. Kitts has probably one of the better models around. They're in the region, I think, started it the earliest, right?
Yeah.
So
In
much
1982 or 1983 they started.
thereabout, and so much so that they actually have it in their constitution, right? And the way they practice it there, it has worked for them. I haven't seen any cases really. I'm not saying that there are not cases, but I haven't seen any cases. And I've met some of their investors there actually, right? And they are all very reputable men. The key to this is by establishing a framework that could withstand scrutiny, that could block out these sort of individuals that you're referring to. And you do this by having, by conducting your due diligence and so on, by recruiting people based on merit. If you recruit people who are based on merit, Jomo, very competent, reputable professionals, attorneys and so on, policymakers and so on, to ensure that this program functions in the way it should, then you would not have those issues.
What about
Any incident would be very, very, very insignificant.
What about the argument that with citizen by investment, with all of these countries doing citizens by investment, we're essentially having a race to the bottom, and the Europeans and some people in the more developed countries are putting pressure on countries like ours. And the government argument essentially that this citizenship by investment program is not sustainable. How do you respond to something like that?
Again, the narrative of the government is always very skewed in most cases, or very biased towards them, because I mean it's not too long ago we started needing visa to go to Canada, right? It wasn't because of citizen by investment program, all right? So it is not only because you have a citizen super investment program, you're being asked for your citizens to start accessing or needing visa, right? Being, in terms of entries, there are greater challenges. But what I've heard, and from my own research, the issue is by not having those robust programs that could withstand scrutiny, right? Once you have established that, once you don't have individuals involved in managing a program with with reasons to have issues or be interrogated and are involved in different activities, then you almost, again, I haven't heard any such allegations against the synced system, right? And they have been benefiting significantly for many years, right? So, and I'm very certain that they will be quite happy to help us implement this problem this system if we were to reach out to them. And I'm sure there are other professionals out there that would guide us in establishing the most robust system, that is citizen survival investment program, that we could potentially have, that would bring us the thought of returns that we anticipate.
Dr. Shallow, what are you trained as? What's your training? What's your educational training?
My doctorate is in financial management, business administration with specialization in financial management.
Right. I ask you that because I want to ask you this. St. Vincent has a national debt that is close to $3 billion, if not more. And that debt, close to $1 billion, is to the Republic of China and Taiwan. I want to know whether, and you may recall that some time ago, the Prime Minister said that his borrowing policy, particularly the borrowing policy with Taiwan, is intended to put a hook in the gill of the country. And he dared anyone to want to take that hook out. Are you concerned, one, about the debt, the galloping nature of the debt, and two, that debt that we have with Taiwan and the ways in which we are accumulating that debt?
Yeah. In addition to my academic training, I'm an avid reader. In fact, you yourself have suggested quite a few texts for me to immerse myself in, and I'm always appreciative of those. So keep them coming, please. There's a book, there's a text called Economic Hitman. I don't know if Confessions of the Economic
Hitman.
Yes, Confessions of the Economic Hitman. I'm sure you have read that.
Oh yes, there are actually 3 volumes, There's a recent volume that came out last year.
Of course. And it shows you the gentleman who wrote those shows how developing economies, developing countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines are being crippled by digging themselves deep in loans and so on, right? It is far from ideal, Jomo. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have oil, we don't have gold and so on, right? But in any sort of financial management, it is always about managing your resources. And whenever you have an investment, you always have to consider return on that investment, right? The question that the government has not been able to answer in a just way, in a prudent way, right, is at what expense to our children, right? Or even our children, it may not even be our children. Are we digging ourselves in terms of borrowing these money at this point, right? What happens when we can't afford to pay off these loans? What is going to happen to St. Vincent and Grenadines? What are we going to lose? What are the opportunity costs and so on associated with whether borrowing or not borrowing? I can't say with any great certainty, and maybe if I see the figures, I might be able to say otherwise. But at this point, I can't speak with any authority that there's absolute prudent financial management taking place under this dispensation.
You can't say.
I mean, you touched on it in your article, this in the last column there, and you stated it. I mean, when you're borrowing the kind of money that we are getting there to build a hospital, right? And the way it was accelerated, we wish everything could be accelerated at that pace, to be honest, right? If it is done in a prudent way. But we can't speak with any conviction as a citizen, right? Not even an opposition. We are informed well enough that we could say that this was done through the most robust procurement process ever. And that in itself is an issue, is a great concern for country, whether now or for the future, because at some point we're expected to repay any loan.
I wanna circle back to North Leeward. Are you confident of victory?
I mean, confidence alone can't win you, but I could tell you that the feedback I've been receiving so far, you know, it certainly shows that it'll be difficult for the incumbent to retain that seat. And you know, I mean, when you win a seat by one vote in a government that has performed, you know, underwhelmingly over the last few years, right? And when your own character it is not a likable one, right? You're almost shooting yourself in the foot. You know, I don't think that if that is the most appropriate comment with the crime rate in the country. But I mean, you understand what I'm saying? It's not literal, but so it is. I certainly believe that it would take almost a miracle, right? And I'm preparing myself, Jomo, for those miracles that some assume normally happen in election, right? Because you know there are the allegations, but by the support I've received on the ground, I'm telling you that it is really overwhelming. I'm very grateful for it. The people have been asking for change, not only NDP supporters, traditional supporters, but you have engaged, because I engage everyone. It is a practice of mine over the years, regardless of what, I engage everyone. My mother and my father, they have taught me that. And so I would hug and greet people who are traditionally ULP supporters. I would hug and greet those who have supported NDP. And everyone I come across, I engage them, I ask them for their opinion, I ask them for the feedback, I ask them the reasons for their decisions at this point, right? And from what I've heard, I could tell you that the people of North Leeward are tired of this administration. And once I'm able to mobilize them on elections day, you know, I expect nothing more than a positive result for NDP.
Well, you are running against a candidate who in 2015 lost by 12 votes. And 12 votes, and in 2021 by a single vote. And I have been on record of saying a politician who goes from -12 to +1 may not have a bright future in politics. But in light of the feedback that you are talking about, Junior John says to you, that feedback did not translate itself in the attendance yesterday. How do you respond to that?
I think there are multiple reasons for the attendance yesterday. In fact, I was quite happy with the turnout. When I woke up in the morning yesterday, I actually look at my phone to see if there was going to be a postponement of the event. Because I mean, once you're in St. Vincent, I think all across St. Vincent, you had those thunderstorms, and they went up until about 10 o'clock. Our event was supposed to start at 11, right? And unfortunately, and again, this is because of neglect of North Leeward. Our terrain is suspect, and people are not very confident traveling to North Leeward, especially during the rainy times. And that would have certainly discouraged a few people, right? And I thank those who braved the weather to attend, and which is why I was quite content actually. And I did commend them when I started my presentation yesterday. I thanked them for braving the weather yesterday morning and turning up to the particular playing field. But I could tell you it was a very fruitful and successful convention, and all of the speakers they delivered. I think our messages that we wanted to get across, we got them out, and of course we have online audience. I understand that we were in the thousands in terms of viewership online, and technology affords us that these days, right? So, Junior, we were quite happy, content with the outcome of the convention yesterday, on a Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon, and also on a day where in the evening and the afternoon we had two football matches, one at 3 o'clock and one in the evening as well, which a few of us attended after the convention yesterday. So I think we achieved what we set out to with having this convention.
But when the decision was taken to hold that second day of the convention in Pitibadel, was that intended to showcase and highlight you and Conroy, who are two new young, if I can say, energizing personalities who had recently come forward in the party?
I'm sure at least some consideration was given. Consideration was given to the fact that both Conroy and myself are from Leeward constituencies, and it worked out well that I am also from North Leeward, and it was appropriate for such a launch. I think it just manifested ideally for the party. But I think at the same time that the decision was made to have the first convention at Democrat House, which was on the 6th before Sunday, and this one I think they were made around the same time, which would have been a few weeks ago.
Right. But I mean, here you have two young men coming forward. Both of them are going to speak for the first time. Don't you think that the leadership, the tactical decisions of the leadership is in question? Why not have a mass meeting where, as to end the convention, why not have a mass meeting where these two persons could get to present to a big NDP crowd or a bigger NDP crowd? I mean, I thought that you all were rather shamefaced yesterday, not the camera panned the crowd, but I didn't see an attempt to show off the crowd. I didn't hear the regular "What up, NDP massive." I didn't hear any of that. It's as if you all were kind of shamefaced with the turnout after all.
Well, I could tell you from being there, I didn't feel that at all. I mean, it was a very energized crowd audience that was there. And I mean, I spoke to Conroy up to this evening, and I mean, he was really excited about the response of the audience and even his delivery. And I congratulated him during my presentation. And again today, I called him today and congratulated him, because I could tell you that, I mean, the crowd that was there, and they were in the pavilion, they were under the tents, and they were all over the field, the playing field. They appreciated the presentations of both Conroy and myself. I mean, when I came off the stage after the end of the formal proceeding, the convention itself, I mean, it took me at least an hour, right, to finish greeting people and so on. And we appreciate, similar to Conroy, we appreciated everyone who took the time to come to Peterborough playing field. It's obviously great for the people of that area as well, because there was certainly some economic activities there as well, as you appreciate when you have these rallies, and those who came out with their bars and so on would have benefited from the turnout there. So I think overall a very fruitful convention. I'm grateful to the party.
I'm not questioning.
And Jomo,
Remember,
we
remember elections are about public relations, huh? Well, not public relations, public perception.
yeah. Well, again, just go and look at the numbers online. Look at the viewership, Jomo. Right? Look at the media today. Tell me what was on all the radio stations this morning. So I would say that certainly the New Democratic Party achieved what it set out to at the convention yesterday. Because every single radio station this morning in this country, right? Every single one, barring none, spoke about the convention yesterday.
Including Star Radio?
I didn't listen to them, but I guarantee you they spoke about it. And whether they spoke about it to commend it or not, they spoke about it. I guarantee you it. All right.
Now,
And so it was
go,
highly
go ahead.
successful.
Go ahead, go ahead. You were
You know,
surprised that
and I said it was very successful. The fact that going on into the next day, and I'm sure that it won't stop there, because whether it is in the newspapers or on the other platforms throughout this week and maybe even into next week, you will still hear about our convention.
I know that your next door neighbor, Conroy Huggins, is an NDP candidate and your brethren. But what is it about his presentation that you thought was exceptional?
An understanding of his constituency, right? He has been on the ground for a few weeks formally. I mean, he has done tremendous work, Jomo. He has been out there. He was able to identify the issues that affecting his people, right? He has been able to make comparisons with how the NDP plans to address them. And I mean, it was an exceptional performance and delivery from him. Great confidence. He has a very powerful voice as a pastor. Something he has practiced, I guess, over the years. But I mean, it was really great to see, and truly, I would say, him having come before me, he performed. He went on stage before me. He inspired me, right? And part of my delivery came from him, debuting in such a spirit and such a performance.
Some people have said that I think Mr. Brewster won by a margin of 503 last time. Some people have said, including some people that I talked to from your party, who thinks that he would have a very difficult time winning that seat. Do you agree that the sheer number is difficult for him to turn around?
Not at all. Not at all. I have observed, like many, the momentum is certainly with the New Democratic Party at this point. Since the announcement of Conroy and myself, two young professionals with solid repetitions as well, right? They have clearly been a shift, a movement in our national politics. And believe you me, Jomo, the government, they're feeling it. I mean, when last have you heard our Prime Minister being so rattled, right? When last have you heard our Prime Minister being so emotional, right? I mean,
the prime minister is always emotional. I thought his characterization. I thought his characterization of you in the last newspaper was kind of was interesting. He called you a hurricane, flim flam opportunist. Now, you want to comment on that?
Listen, if the gentleman could come on a radio, right? National radio, and I do have a problem with that too. I don't know, but I will comment on that another time. But to be using the national radio, I'm not sure if that is a paid ULP program.
No, it's not. That's just Gonzalez abusing the radio.
Well, I mean that is absolutely ridiculous. But we'll move past that for now. But you go in, and if you could come on a radio, Jomo, and a fellow who you just credited, and you spoke very well about it, and I thank you for coming to my defense, right? Just executed the biggest World Cup ever in the history of ICC, right? And to just say plainly that, you know what, I'm not even going to repeat what he said, all right? As I just simply concluded in my remarks yesterday that it was a grudgeful and cantankerous response, right? And I stand by that. Now, the fact that he could say that, it means that he could say anything after. So whatever he wrote in the paper, it is neither here or there for me, and I'm sure he's going to continue, right? I'm very certain.
Yeah.
But what it does, Jomo, what it shows, right, is a very inconsiderate, inconsistent, right, leader, right, insincere as well, disingenuous leader. Because here you are, weeks ago, Jomo, weeks, crediting someone for the exceptional leadership on the regional and international stage, right? Here you are in recent time under your administration saying that you are promoting youth. You're promoting young people. You form this big council of youth, young people, and you want them to think. And then, that is one hand. On the other hand, you also have our crime rate that is increasing, where young people are getting involved in criminal activities. And what you're going to do, you see someone who is making significant promise, who is making significant progress in his professional career, and you're going to try to drag him down, right? Let me say it like that. You're trying to discredit him, Jomo, simply because he chose to be on the opposing side, right? This is a political leader. This is your prime minister, Jomo. Almost 80 years old, right? Almost twice my age, right? Who is doing that? Is this an individual who is concerned about the country?
He didn't serve himself well at all. He didn't serve himself. I think he's gonna live to regret it. But the way he is, you can be sure that more attacks is gonna come. Junior John wants to remind you that a year in politics is a long time. He says a year in politics is a long time, Kishore. Plenty work still to do. I'm sure you would agree with that.
100%. And I don't plan to be around for just a year either. So even after elected, when the next election is called, it's going to be hard work still, because one thing about this NDP administration, right? One thing about this entity, one thing about Dr. Friday's leadership, and I had conversations with him. It is not just about being elected for office. It is about going there and repaying the people for the confidence that they're going to place in us in the next elections, right? And so it is not about 1 year. It is about getting into office and working even harder after getting in office to deliver for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Personally, that is something that I have managed to do well over my professional life, particularly in public service, because in my cricket administration, that is pretty much what it is. And I would just state that even at Cricket West Indies, and people believe that it is an executive position, it is a job. It is not. So it is all public service, whether it is president of St. Vincent and Grenadines Cricket Association, president of the Windward Islands Cricket Board, or Cricket West Indies. It is public service. And
so it's not a job that pays a salary.
No, it is not. It is not. I am the chairperson of a board, right? And the point I was making there, Jomo, is that in every case, whenever people place confidence in me to elect me for these positions, I've worked even harder to ensure that I've repaid them for such confidence placed in me. And I guarantee you that with the New Democratic Party, with Dr. Friday and all my other colleagues, once we are elected, and I have no doubt that we are going to be given such confidence and opportunity, we are going to be working doubly hard to repay them for such confidence.
Now, we are coming towards the end of the program. You talked a lot about youth in this presentation. If there's a single word, well, not a single word, do you have a particular statement that you would like to make to the young people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Well, I hope that they're not discouraged by the attack of the Prime Minister and one of their peers, right? I hope that as a result that they are not intimidated to speak up, Jomo, right? They're not intimidated to make an independent choice, an independent decision, right? Because our country is at that stage where people are intimidated, people are fearful that if they speak up, if they act in any way contrary to what the leader says, whether it is professional or otherwise, they are being stifled, they're being punished. I mean, you know what the reality is, right? Let me tell you, and I like to be very frank and put things into context. Since I've decided to be a candidate, the number of calls I have received, right? And I'm not talking about those well wishes and congratulatory remarks and so on. Calls about people genuinely being concerned about my well-being, about my safety, right? I mean, it is ridiculous that people with great conviction believe by opposing our government, you're at a risk, right? That your safety could be compromised, right? And so there's that great intimidation factor that our young people face, and it is unfair. It is unfair, right? And it is one of the reasons, and I've said this to others, that has inspired me to step into this political arena, because I do not believe that people should have such fear. That should not be a factor in considering whether to enter politics or not, right? It shouldn't be because of your safety. It should not be. It should not be because you feel that you'll be victimized and marginalized if you're supporting one party, right? And in 2024, you would have thought that we have matured enough as an independent, a democratic society that we are past that. And unfortunately, we are not. And that is indeed a failing on this government and on this prime minister, that people are fearful that because they support the opposition, their life is at risk, their economic situation is at great risk, right? And they could, not only them, but their families and friends could also be victimized and face similar situations. And with that, I encourage our young people to stand up, Jomo, to stand up, right? Because unless we stand up to such, unless we stand up against these economic assassination, as my good colleague Conroy put it, because he said that he has faced that economic assassination, right? I want
he's using a nice word there, man. I like those words. Economic assassination.
It is, and I mean, it's unfortunate that he has to use them, but it is his reality, and I'm sure many others. But our young people have to know that the future is with them, right? Our generation, we have to stand up, right? And I say that once we stand up in unity, once we stand up together, right? For all the young females out there as well, there are independent female, there are single mothers out there who are, taken advantage of because of our system and so on. I mean, we could go on and on, Jomo, but listen, we have to do better, and we can do better.
I have a final question for you. In the last election, the governing party spent an inordinate amount of money. In fact, a lot of money was spent in North Leeward, and the governing party won by 1 vote. I have said, I'm on record of saying that I can't recall any election in the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I observed a few of them, that had been so perverse, so perverted in the use of money to buy an election. And you can be sure, as the ULP goes for a sixth term, that they are going to dig even deeper and probably would spend even more money. Do you have a message? Well, one, I don't know if you could match it as an opposition party, but do you have a message for people who may be confronted with an attempt to buy their votes?
Jomo, I have absolutely no doubt that this government is going to be abusing state resources for their own self-interest to return to office. When people are desperate for power, they will do absolutely anything. And we are seeing this with this government. From the attempted assassination of my reputation, right, of my professional life, which has started in a very infantile way, right, to what others have I would say experience, right? We know this. In fact, from the announcement of both Conroy's and my candidacies, we have seen, those representatives already in the area a lot more. They're now spending more money. I understand they have millions of dollars lined up now to spend in North Leeward. And I welcome it. And I said to the people of North Leeward, embrace it all. Let them come and spend it. In fact, they were supposed to be spending it before, Jomo, right? And if it takes an election, which is quite unfortunate, but if it takes an election for them to spend, let them spend it. Know fully well that this is not their money they're giving you. And even if it's their money, believe you me, it came through the system anyway, right? But this is state resources they're giving you which you deserve. So accept the money, accept the projects, but know that you are better than just being bought out, or that they can't buy you out for an election, Jomo. I mean, just a quick example before we wrap up. And boy, when I told you 2 hours seem a little long, you told me the time just fly.
Yeah, I don't like to go on illegally, so you have to try and wrap it up.
Yeah, but I mean, look at their projects that have been outstanding for years. I spoke already about those farmers. I guarantee you they're going to try to relocate these farmers, and they're going to try and compensate these farmers from North Leeward before this election. They might do it next week, they might do it next month because of the pressure, right? There were some daily workers, I understand, some assessors who approved sometime since Beryl. I guarantee you, because of the momentum now with NDP, you're going to see these people being paid and employed and engaged, right? And they're responding to the pressure, but that is what the opposition is supposed to do. And we are going to keep them under pressure, Jomo, so that they could deliver for our people. And then when the elections time come, the people are going to know it is because of the NDP, why they have spent these money and put on these projects. And as a result, they're going to reward the NDP administration. Thank you.
Okay, sir. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Kishore Shallow. I want to thank those people who commented on the platform. I want to thank all of you who stayed up for the last 2 hours and listened. There are so many other things that you could have done, but you chose to stay and listen to Dr. Kishore Shallow and the Voices program. I did tell you it was educational and inspirational, and I think you had it tonight. Remember, read, pay close attention, because what you don't know can kill you. Until next week, this is Jomo Thomas saying good night from Voices.
WeFM 99.9 presents Voices, a talk show that's not just new, it's phenomenal. Voices, it's interactive and